Hello and welcome back to the Climb Blue Podcast post-match reaction live on YouTube this evening. I'm Dan Rolinson, joined by Matt Lynch. Matt, it's been a while. How's things, mate?
Yeah, all good. Yeah, I think last season I was only on for victories, and I feel like I've started as I mean to go on for this season as well. So no, I can't complain.
Well, fingers crossed, Matt will be getting you on every week, eh? As the old cliche goes. If you're the winning lucky charm, we'll have you every week. This podcast is sponsored by NordVPN. If you want to get your hands on a tasty discount code, all the information that you need is in the description down below. We'll be here for the next half an hour or so, talking all things Leicester City. You said, Matt, just before we started, I thought we might end up talking about a draw there. You're a little bit nervous towards the end?
I thought it was a comfortable display, to be honest, but the way the referee was and how erratic it felt, I felt like he could have pulled any decision at any moment. And I mean, right to death with that Vardy incident. I mean, I was offside, but crikey, I mean, does send your heart palpitations going, doesn't it?
What did you make of the game overall? I think it's probably the worst we've played out of the 3 games so far, but 3 points is 3 points. I think we played better against Arsenal. I think we said after the Arsenal game, actually, we'll play worse than that and win, and we've gone and done that pretty much straight away. Not that we were the second best team or that we were rubbish. I'm not saying that, but it wasn't classic Villa, was it? That's not the free flowing Villa that we're used to. There's moments of it, but there's also moments of kind of shakiness as well.
Yeah, I thought we were actually quite comfortable, all things considered. I wouldn't say it was a great performance, but I thought we were comfortable. I don't think Leicester particularly threatened us too much. I mean, Bogarde had a tough time of it at periods when it came to down the wings, but overall, I thought we coped quite well, and I think we looked comfortable. I mean, we had that spell after about 10 minutes in the first half, and I think for the rest of the first half, we were pretty solid and pretty dominant. I mean, Leicester came out better in the second half, but overall, it did feel comfortable. I wouldn't say it was a great performance by any means, but I don't think Leicester necessarily pushed our buttons enough to cause problems. I mean, Onana and Tielemans on those bookings probably didn't help that in terms of us trying to dictate play a bit more, but it was certainly the case for me that I thought it was more comfortable than perhaps the performance deserved in terms of the way we played.
I in our preview went 4-0 in the end for my prediction, which was probably a little bit ambitious, really. And it wasn't that kind of game where we just go there and it's. I get what you're saying; it was comfortable, and I agree with that. But in my head, I was maybe thinking this will be easy, comfortable. Like we'll score a few goals, it'll all be fine, no stress whatsoever. That's not the case. Like we've conceded. That's the first thing. And also Leicester have had bits of periods of the play where you think, oh, this is not as comfortable as I would like it to be, but still absolutely deserving of the win. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that we didn't deserve to win. But it just wasn't this kind of perfect free-flowing game that you think of. Villa are a top 4, top 6 side, and Leicester are, the Leicester City correspondent predicts them to be 20th. So, like they're not very good, basically. But I didn't feel like that during the game. I felt like we played well against West Ham. We played well against Arsenal. We've played all right here, but not anywhere near to our fullest of potential. Let's talk about Bogarde first of all. That was probably one that we maybe weren't expecting. There was talk from the press conference yesterday about Bogarde as maybe can play right back and that he's been training in that position. We all kind of thought, well, Cash can't play because he's injured. Carlos can't play because he's injured. So Konsa has to play centre back. So Nedeljkovic probably has to play right back. Then Bogarde plays, which is nobody probably was expecting that. Obviously, Nedeljkovic was fit because he came on and was on the bench. What did you make of his kind of overall performance for a Premier League debut?
You know what? I can't fault him. I think he had his challenges on that wing, especially in the second half, and they were doubling up on him quite a lot. But I thought he was quite composed overall. I think that he handled Vardy pretty well when Vardy was coming in on that side as well. So you can't ask for much more as debuts go. I mean, he looked fairly composed going forwards. I think there was a few opportunities where that final ball probably wasn't there, but then you'd sort of excuse him from that just by virtue of the fact he's a centre back by trade or a centre defensive midfielder perhaps in youth level. So to go into that right back role where it's perhaps a bit more unfamiliar to him, I think that going forwards he probably offered more arguably than what Konsa does when Konsa steps into that position. But yeah, I think perhaps a little bit more composure, but that will come and mean he's 20 and that's his Premier League debut. You can't ask for much more than a victory, and I think he did fairly well. I mean, he did have his problems, and I think that came just later on in the game. I think that's clear when you made that switch to bring Nedeljkovic on, because that I think he was struggling with the pace of the game at that point, and I think that they had the better of him at that point. But for the 70 minutes that he was on the pitch, I thought that it's an impressive debut to go by, and to step into that role. It's not like he's been asked to play centre back, is it? So yeah, a real positive, and it's reassuring because I think there's been a bit of talk said about the lack of depth, perhaps, but to have him step up like that and have Sil Swinkle sat on the bench, I mean, why not look at your own ranks before you're looking elsewhere? And it's great to see.
Well, I suppose if you're breaking it down, I know people will make arguments about the quality and the experience are probably more so. But if you've got Cash, Konsa, Nedeljkovic and Bogarde that can all play right back, and two of those could play centre back as well. Obviously Konsa, but Bogarde could play centre back as well. But I do have depth there. Whether it is of a high enough standard for where Villa want to get to is a totally different debate. But Villa have options. The injuries we'll get to it in a second of where kind of already feels like they're mounting up a little bit. Just on Bogarde, there was a couple of moments where he kind of plays the ball. It should be a simple passing and gave the ball away and things like that, which I'll just put down to Premier League debut, young player makes a mistake, like nothing too serious at all. The one really that is a thing but isn't because we've won is he got skinned for the goal. Like, I don't know who the Leicester player was off the top of my head, but he's kind of sold him inside out, hasn't he? And Bogarde's been committed to go and make a challenge, and he's gone the other way and he's put the ball across and they've scored. That's the only thing really that you put down as being a mistake or an error, but ultimately Villa have won, so we can kind of carry that mistake. It just hasn't meant anything.
No, I mean, I genuinely mean it when I say that with Fatawu and Mafididi, both of those guys that were doubling up at times. I think that you won't come across more trickier wingers than the pair of them this season. I think that both of them are very capable and were Leicester's best players at times. So it's no mean feat that for most parts that he didn't have too much trouble to go with. And I think to deal with Vardy, how he did when Vardy was pulled over to that hand side of the pitch, I think he did very well. So yeah, look, the goal is the goal, but you could look at a handful of things that's gone on in that goal. I mean, the way
we can still stop the goal happening afterwards, can't we?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there's multiple factors that's gone into that and that particular moment that's happened. But Bogarde, yeah, it's going to happen. Those mistakes are going to happen, but you live and learn with those. I mean, there's a reason why he's been the Dutch under-20s captain previously and things like that. You know, it's clear that there's a huge player in there, and it's clear why United didn't want to send him out to Nottingham Forest and tie him down for long term.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's move further up the pitch then. Amadou Onana gets his second goal in 3 games, which is, we joked about it after West Ham as being like, oh, Douglas Luiz, his goal contributions, how are we going to replace them? Well, Onana's done it on his debut. It's now 2 in 3, which whether he can keep that up or not is remains to be seen. You assume his goals will dry up at some point. But the actual finish is obviously, it's a tap-in, isn't it, for Onana? He hasn't got loads to do. But what we want to talk about is the move, the free kick, the set piece. Austin McPhee earning his money once again. Very so out of the blue, so simple. It's just literally a pass. Jacob Ramsey takes a great touch, puts a ball across, and it taps in. It's not a flashy goal, but that's nice to see, isn't it? Because I think the commentator said something like, Villa would have played their hand with that set piece. If it doesn't work, you can't do that again. So the fact that it's gone in is like a massive tick in the box of, well done. You've worked on something, and it paid off.
Yeah, I think that what we're seeing with Onana in particular is that it's the cliche, isn't it? But the shackles are off. I think that in the Everton role, he didn't have that freedom to do what he does in the game now for Villa, which is play that box to box role and to be able to commit forwards when it comes to those driving runs. And the goal is a testament to that because he's put himself in the right place. It's clear that's been worked on many times before, by the way. But I think that the clear bit there is that Austin McPhee has done his homework and it's worked out very well. And I think I've said it before, but it's very much the case that Unai Emery leaves everything to do with McPhee when it comes to those situations. Yeah. He has zero involvement. It's purely down to McPhee and his knowledge and his know-how, and it shows. And yeah, look, I think that it's an easy finish, as you say. Some will say to tap him, but it's the work that's gone into it, as you say. Price, that's not the work that's gone on the pitch either. It's what's happened in midweek when they've been on the training pitch that's led to that goal. What Tielemans has played the ball, wasn't it? And then to Ramsey, and then it's quite an easy finish. But the work for all that goal has been done in the week. That's just a simple training ground move, and it's very clever. It's very astute. But yeah, the wider point there with Onana and his goal contributions is I think we'll see a lot more of that. There's a few driving runs in there, and arguably you wouldn't see those driving runs from Luiz last season. There was the one in the second half where he got himself that dead leg where he made a burst in run and and did the whole Leicester team for pace for 60 yards, and Ramsey nearly got to the end of it in terms of a finish on top of winning the ball. So yeah, there's more to come from him in that driving midfielder role, and I still think there's a lot more potential in him that's untapped. And I think people may laugh at the 50 million at the time, but there's a £100 million player in there.
Yeah, I think when we spoke to our Everton counterparts, they were saying that 50 million is a good deal for Everton because they obviously get 50 million. But if it wasn't for the kind of need to sell, they could probably wait out and say, well, actually, this is a kind of £75 million deal that we'd be after, an 80 million deal that we'd be after. So Villa kind of sounds mad, got a bargain at 50 million. If he develops at the rate he is and Emery makes him better, then yeah, you're right. 80, 90 million is kind of where you could see him moving to X club in the future, but not for a long time, we hope. Kind of going in the reverse order here of where things happen, because we'll talk about Jacob Ramsey coming on in a second, even though he's involved in the build-up for that goal. I've only seen it back a couple of times, but it's properly fizzed in by Tielemans. Like Ramsey has to take a really nice touch to get control of it. Part of me wondered, like, was it meant for Ramsey, or was it like the player behind him? I'd need to see it back to know for sure. What's interesting with that, if it was meant for Ramsey, how did they train that? Because Ramsey wasn't starting, so would that have been Bailey? Or does it not work like that?
It's a fair point, but I feel like that's the simpleton terms of two people that have never played professional football in their life. I think that they're all well tuned to this stuff, and they'll have gone over this for whoever happens to be in that position. That could have potentially been Nedeljkovic or Bogarde or whoever it is on that right hand side as well. So I think it's just the case of they've seen Leicester like that. I mean, the commentator mentioned it prior to the goal, is that Leicester are playing a very high line when it came to those set pieces, and it's clear that's been worked on the fact that Leicester are playing that high line at free kicks, and it's something that's worked to perfection. And I think whoever is in that position, I mean, the difference there is it's the end ball and quality that comes with having somebody like Ramsey that happens to be in that position at that moment.
Just away from Ramsey, then obviously he's the player that came on for Bailey. We'll get onto his impact in a second, although we've kind of talked about it. Bailey going off injured in the first, 15 minutes, something off the top of my head. Not a great sign, holding the back of his leg, which is obviously had problems with hamstring before. Going back a long time, I've joked a lot about his kind of hamstring, cheese string legs and stuff, although he stayed injury-free for a lot of last season and obviously was very good. My instant fear is hopefully he hasn't got kind of old problems returning. But again, it feels like a little bit that, we kind of say at the start of the season, well, if Villa have got a fully fit squad, injuries will happen, but, we'll kind of navigate that as best we can. For game week 3, to have Cash, Carlos and Bailey all missing and Watkins not up to speed yet, it already feels like we're up against it in terms of injuries.
Well, Philogene wasn't even in the matchday squad.
Of course, yeah. That's my first thinking. It's like Philogene is Bailey's backup, and he's not even available today either.
Yeah, I think that hopefully it's just a precaution with Bailey, because it did look like something tweaked, but then in terms of the incident, it seemed fairly innocuous. He was just stretching for the ball, so hopefully there's not too much there. But yeah, it is a concern because you look at the depth, and we're back to 2 goalkeepers on the bench already. Swinkles, who obviously hasn't made a professional start yet, but I'm not too concerned about the Swinkles piece or the 2 goalkeepers at the moment, because it's clear that Mings isn't too far away, and it sounds like Kamara's not either. So the option,
and Philogene or Bailey could even be back by the time we next play anyway.
Yeah, I think that, well, the fact that Philogene was named in England's under-21 squad yesterday, I can't think it'll be too bad. And we have to remember there's the international break coming up today, so there's some time for these guys to, it's been a brutal few weeks to start the season. 3 matches, 3 tough matches at that as well, taking on Arsenal and on West Ham. They're pretty tough starts to the season, and to take on a well-organised Leicester side today, it's not the easiest of starts to the season for them, and the pace that they're going at and what's to come after the international break, hopefully it's nothing too major, but I'm not too concerned at the moment. But I'm sure we'll hear more, and it seems that it was just a little knock for Onana, so hopefully that one's not too much. And as I say, Philogene hopefully in a similar boat as well, just by virtue of the fact that he did get that call up yesterday for England.
Yeah. We spoke yesterday on the deadline day preview podcast that we did about squad depth, and started to answer a few questions about whether Villa were better this year than they were last year in terms of their options, and kind of remains to be seen. We will get a bit more of an idea of that as the games tick by, which is a cop-out answer. We'll talk about it more next week, I think. Like, we're seeing Onana obviously already contributing. Is not a replacement for Louise, but you know what I mean? Like, we're kind of starting to see things already. When we talk about Bailey coming off, and we saw Philogene as his kind of backup, for him to be injured makes you think, okay, now what? What do we do? The fact that we can bring on Jacob Ramsey, who is a 40, 50, 60 million pound player at his prime kind of thing. and be able to change things because we have those options now. That McGinn plays off the left now, whereas last season he was this kind of support striker coming off the right. We could just switch it up and go, okay, McGinn, you go back onto the right-hand side, Jack Ramsey, you come onto the left instead. And all of a sudden, Villa have options that we're not going, okay, well, Bailey's injured, Philogene injured, now what? You can bring on someone like a Jacob Ramsey who is involved in the goal, involved throughout the game as well. You know, hardly played any minutes this season, but he's got 2 assists. That's pretty good going to have that option to be a bench player. Same with Duran as well, who we'll come on to in a sec.
Yeah, I think with JJ especially, it's about managing his minutes for the time being. I think we forget that last summer he was at the Euros for the under-21s and got injured, came back very briefly and sort of got injured again, and then he didn't really struggle for minutes and didn't look himself at all. So I think it's clear we're managing those minutes to get him back into the first team in terms of regular minutes, and I don't think that's part of the reason why he came off early today, by the way. I think that's just pure tactical reasons. But in terms of him moving forwards, I think there's a starting role for him very soon. And there's that flexibility, as you say. I think we're actually in a position now where you could argue that McGinn won't start games week in, week out. I'd argue that McGinn's place isn't guaranteed in that side anymore, especially when Kamara's back in the fold as well. I very much would say that's the case, that McGinn's role isn't guaranteed. So, and that's due to the options that we have there. But harking back to the point on Ramsey, for me, the great point there is that his flexibility to work across that 3, whether he's from the right, left, or down the middle, similar to Morgan Rogers as well. It gives us those options, and we worry about depth and think, oh, there's no Bailey or no Philogene, but you've got Rogers there, and you've got Ramsey, who are both very capable of that. And as you say, with McGinn as well, all those 3 are quite capable of switching across that sort of 3 behind Watkins as such. So there's no alarm bells from me on that front, and I think that after the international break, we might be in a position where we see JJ starting just because he'll have had those extra couple of weeks in his system. Plus, obviously, when Dia's still to come back properly into the fold as well, again, it's clear those minutes have probably been managed. So we'll probably see him very soon as well in terms of getting those minutes that when Dia you'd expect to see as well.
Yeah, I think when we talk about, not bare bones is not the right phrase, but we've kind of got a few injuries. We've already got the 2 goalkeepers on the bench, that kind of thing. The fact that the subs have still been able to change the game, that Ramsey's come on for Bailey and got the assist, Duran's come on again and got the winner. Again, twice, he's done that twice already this season. He's our joint top goal scorer with Onana, who predicts that at the start of the season. It just shows the development that Villa have done over the last 6 to 12 months in the transfer windows to be able to build a squad now that is capable beyond the starting 11. We got a comment from Steve who says, when do we have the conversation about John Duran starting games? Now, Steve, is when we're going to have that conversation. I replied to a tweet from Ty Bracey who said something like, I get why people are saying this, but we kind of have to back Ollie Watkins for who he is, kind of rally behind him, all that kind of stuff, which I agree with. John's point, and something he said before, and something I'm inclined to agree with, is that this is what Duran's for, really, I think. He's a substitute impact player. He's a chaos creator. He's somebody who's going to come on and change the game. He's done that twice now. I'm not sure. Again, this is all you never know because we're probably not going to see it. I don't know whether the dynamic is the same the other way around. Duran starting games, would he be as impactful? No idea. Would Ollie Watkins coming on with 20 minutes to go cause enough impact, cause enough chaos to score a goal and win the game? Obviously came off the bench in the Euros and scored a winning goal. But do you know what I mean? I feel like that's Duran's role. It's prime for him to kind of almost come on and be the story, be the main man. I think that probably suits him. So how do you assess that striking options now? He's scored against West Ham off the bench, doesn't start against Arsenal, scores against Leicester off the bench. When we come back against whoever it is, I've forgotten, Everton, is it? Everton, yeah.
Everton home.
Does John Duran start against Everton?
No. And I remember John's point, and I think that's what stuck in my head. I put a post on Threads earlier which said that I don't think John Duran is a starting striker for us, and I think that he's better suited to that impact role. I think it plays into his character. I think there's another argument there to say, well, how do you maintain that attitude and manage it? Because it's clear that he fancies himself a bit up top to start games, but it's pretty clear that in terms of Duran, he's an impact player. The starting striker week in, week out is for Emery, it's Watkins. And the point there for me is that I don't think you're going to find many better strikers to come on the pitch and make an impact than Duran. There's not many out there that can do what he does and cause the chaos he does. And I don't think after the starting blocks, Duran is that player. I think he's a very different player when he starts matches, but when he comes on to make an impact, he makes that statement. Of course, this could be another conversation in 3 weeks' time when Watkins hasn't scored still, let's say, hopefully touch what he does, and Duran has scored another 2 in that time. That's a different conversation at that point. But at this moment in time, there's no way Emery would remove Watkins from the system. Watkins plays a huge part in that system. I think that what Duran does is offer us something very different in that area. It's a rough and tumble that he brings. It's the running off the line a bit more than what Ollie does, because Ollie will link up play a lot more than Duran arguably does. And there's something to be said for the temperament as well of a player like Watkins who can play a full 90 and quite happily do the dirty work as well. I don't think Duran's quite there yet as well. So I get the debate to say it, but it's quite easy to say that. But I think there's some very good strikers that you can point to who had a better impact coming off the bench. And I think that at this moment in time, Duran's currently in that category.
Yeah, and whilst Duran is coming off the bench, scoring the goal that wins us points, why change that? Why even risk him like starting games and not being impactful? At the moment, what is happening is working. I kind of get the Watkins debate, if you like. We've played 3 games, he's played 3 hours, he's come off at the 60-minute mark in every game. He's clearly building up his fitness. This is effectively his pre-season. I think the point that is interesting to where Villa have been in the past is that we're not reliant upon Ollie Watkins to win points and win games for us. Like, yeah, obviously we want him in the team, we want him firing, we want him scoring 15, 20 goals. And you're right, he is crucial to the system and the way that Emery wants to play. So Duran is not going to start games, in my opinion, not yet. Duran's got a lot of learning to do to be able to do what Ollie Watkins can do. Yes, he'll come off the bench and get the goal here and there, but everything else, I think Watkins is superior at the moment. So yeah, don't change it. Keep doing what you're doing. I think if this is 2012, 2013, Christian Benteke, and we're relying on him, you have to score today to get us anything because the rest of the team is pretty abject. If this is 2018, 2019, Jack Grealish, who everything goes through you because we're pretty rubbish without you, that isn't Aston Villa anymore. But we can kind of carry Ollie Watkins not being great at the moment. We got 6 points from 9. We gave Arsenal a great game where he himself should have scored at least one of those chances. So this isn't like end of the world stuff that Ollie Watkins isn't firing and Aston Villa are in the relegation zone after 3 games. Like they've got 1 point because the main man's not doing it. We've got so many options around him that we can kind of help him along and play him into fitness, play him into confidence maybe as well, because the players around him will kind of pick up the slack a little bit. In 3-4 weeks' time, when we're back after the international break, I fully expect Watkins to be playing more than 60 minutes and he will score at some point. And when he does, we've seen it in the past, he tends to go on a bit of a run. And I think the kind of course for Duran starting will go away a little bit. But if Ollie Watkins scores the first goal and then Duran comes off the bench on the 80th minute and scores the second and sees the game out, perfect. That's exactly what you want.
Yeah, I think that the piece there as well, though, you have to remember in Watkins' case as well, is that he runs between the lines and makes those chances off his own back. And I don't think particularly today, I mean, he had that one chance where Hermansen made a good save, but to be fair, in that moment, he didn't probably get a clean shot away because Justin was running as the cover and made a bit of an impact on him actually taking that shot away. So he's probably a second away there. That second that comes in a couple of weeks' time from having a clean shot, a goal there and scoring because you'd back him to do so. But again, good save. It's not like he had many chances today anyway. I think the way we played wasn't necessarily always looking for him and through him anyway. I think we approached it a very different approach on that. And I'd argue, to be fair, he probably didn't have the service either. I mean, Bogarde, as you said, as we touched on earlier, probably didn't have the end product to put those balls in. And I think Santiago made the point on a thread the other week as well, that Dean seems to have gone backwards on his attacking impetus, but gone forwards in terms of his defensive ability. And with that, I don't think he put one ball into the box from memory today, which was anything close to being something that Watkins could attack. So, look, you have to look at it on that and look at the way the game was at that point, and perhaps he didn't have the opportunities that perhaps he was deserving of anyway to make that impact in 60 minutes.
It was Dean's ball for Duran's goal, wasn't it, I think? Was it? I'm doubting myself now. I feel I'm pretty sure it was.
Rodgers was involved as well.
I think Dean put the ball in. Well, it doesn't matter anyway.
Yeah, he hung it up. Yeah, okay, yeah. I think, yeah.
Okay. That was probably the one time.
Yeah, but my point was during Watkins' time on the pitch anyway, in terms of that period of the game. So,
yeah, okay, fair. Two final points then, just away from the game generally. Actually, three. Let's do three very quickly. Transfers. We've obviously spoken about it a lot. What's your kind of assessment on the window? Are you happy with it?
Yeah, the point I have with the window is that I don't want it to be the approach where Simon Dawkins comes in on loan because we're panicked. I think that Zaniolo was a bit of that last summer, arguably as well, and that mould. And I don't want it to be that we're signing these players purely because we think we might be a little bit low on options. I'd rather have players that Emery trusts that can come straight into that starting 11. If that means we had a quiet deadline day, then so be it. I'm not here craving those extra players. I think that the transfer business was fairly solid. I think we knew what we wanted early on. Obviously, there's that concern over that Matty Cash sort of right back role, and whereby we see it as being perhaps it's time for Matty to move on as such, but that's clearly not been the case. I know he's in a lot of different clubs this summer, but in terms of the overall transfer business, pretty happy. I think the Enzo loan move makes total sense. He's not going to get the minutes he needs. And you look at those loan moves that have happened with Sam Elam Jr. moving away to Bologna as well. That's clearly purely about minutes and the development of those players. And they're going to top clubs. And if they were getting sent on loan to Sunderland and Sheffield Wednesday, respectively, you might turn your nose up a bit at it because it's Bologna and Valencia, respectively. You look at it and you go, okay, fair enough. So on that front, no concern as far as I'm concerned in terms of alarm bells. And I look at it and it's very much that case of, if you can't improve that squad in terms of quality and depth, there's 0 point in bringing in the player that's going to be a bit part player. I mean, what have we had down the line in recent years? You've had Zaniolo, who arguably had his moments, but it was clear it was a bit of a last-minute panic go. Was it Augunston? I can't remember.
Yeah, the left back.
Yeah, another one there that was last minute, and in the end, he got sent back early, didn't he? Jan Bednarek, all these players that were signed at last minute. There's a flippant, we need bodies. I don't want that to be our approach moving forwards. And I think there has to come a pinch point as well where you go, why should we develop other players for other clubs? We're at a level now where we don't need to be doing that. We need to be producing our own, as shown today with Bogarde coming in. I mean, Trevor Chalobah's joined Crystal Palace, hasn't he? But he'd been the only one that I'd have gone, yeah, okay, but I've wanted something where we're not just developing him for Chelsea, we're developing him because we'll buy him in 12 months down the line. So for me, I'm happy because we're not just loaning somebody just because we're going to help another club boost their transfer fee by 10 million.
Just on the start of the season then, in our big season preview, I had us down for 4 points from these first three. And I was expecting that to be a win today and a draw against West Ham and a defeat to Arsenal. So we're 6 points, obviously, from 9. The performance against Arsenal was encouraging. And as we've said on another day, I think we were worthy of at least a point in that game as well. What did you predict at the start of the season? Can you remember, or did you even think about it like that?
To be honest, I'd written on anything off.
You should just say 6, really.
I'd written everything off before the international break. I think it's impossible to really take anything away from those first 3 weeks of the season because you've got the international break and then before that, you've got the transfer deadline day. All these factors, players coming back from the Euros. I mean, I was surprised Ollie even started for that opening game of the season. So for me, I'd have taken anything in those 3 games as long as there was a couple of points in there for sure.
Yeah, okay. I'm very happy with 6, as I'm sure everybody is. I think most people would have had us down for 3 or 4, to be honest. Everyone was kind of writing off West Ham as being a difficult one, and obviously we've gone on and won. Everyone is going to say, well, it's Arsenal, and then I think most people would have wanted us to have won today. The fact that we got the win on the first day of the season meant 4 points was then no longer enough for me, because that would have meant drawing today, which would have been a pretty crap result, really. So 6 is better than I thought we'd do, and about par for where I think we need to be for these early opening stages of the season. Final point, Champions League draw. Can't get somebody different onto the show without at least talking about it. Today we've learned the order of when we play them and when the dates are, which is something we'll look at more in the Q&A on Monday, because it's, I think it's Bayern Munich in the midweek after we play Man United, I think, off the top of my head. Like that's suddenly a massive week, isn't it? So we'll look at where fixtures lie. Celtic is the final game. Is that going to be like we're already through and that's like a big party? Or is it like we need something? That'll be a massive atmosphere. There's all these kind of little talking points around it. So away from kind of where the fixtures are, just the draw as a whole. Firstly, how surreal was it seeing Gigi Buffon hold Aston Villa on a little piece of paper? And also the draw as well, with more reflection, the more I look at it, I think we've done really well. I think that's a great draw.
There's two ways of looking at it. I'm really happy with that draw. Some fans would be underwhelmed because they'd quite fancy going to Real Madrid away.
Yeah, it's
And
missing a big away day.
there's part of me that goes, no, let's find our feet in the Champions League this year by having that easier. You could say it's an easy running, but it's not easy. They're all Champions League teams for a reason. I mean, young boys have turned plenty of teams over at their ground before, at the Wankdorf Stadium.
Don't start.
But the thing is, with the whole thing with it for me is that I look at it and go, I'd take anyone on at Villa Park. I mean, I don't look at Bayern Munich. The Bayern Munich that we currently see are not the Bayern Munich of old, not the Bayern Munich of 3 years ago, let alone the Bayern Munich that won the Champions League multiple times a couple of years ago as well. There are very different outlets to that, despite having Harry Kane in their ranks. So there should be no fear for that match. I don't think we should be fearing Juventus particularly. I know they're European giants, but we've played European giants at Villa Park in recent years and turned them over. The away bit does concern me just because we wasn't brilliant on the road last season on the Conference League by any stretch of the imagination. But you look at it and you're jostling for position. And Celtic last game, there's a very likely chance that both of us could actually be safe. I don't necessarily believe we'll be into the final 16 by finishing in that magic top 8.
No.
But I don't necessarily believe we're going to be in a position where we're going to be too concerned. And I think we'll actually be in a position where that match means not too much because we're basically waiting for the draw to find out who we're going to play to hopefully get a last 16 spot.
Yeah, I think that has kind of got the elements of like party feeling on it. We already know we're going to be in that middle playoff bit. I think by then, I saw something on social media the day of the draw that had like, I don't know where the simulations come from. I don't know whether it's like Football Manager of the game, or whether it's some kind of data model or whatever. But it was like, I think it was 10,000 simulations had that to get into that middle period of 9th to 24th. You probably need 3 wins. As an average over 10,000 simulations, 9 points is enough to finish the bottom of that. So 3 wins out of 8 doesn't feel monumental, especially given the ties that we've got. You'd look at Bologna and the other home game that's not Bayern or Juventus, Celtic. The away games aren't kind of massively impossible. Like you said, they're all difficult because it's the Champions League, but it isn't Real Madrid, it's not Barcelona, Atletico, it's Leipzig and I don't know, Monaco. Yeah, there's games there where you think Villa, if they're on their A game and they put everything into it, they could get something. So yeah, 3 points, 3 wins, sorry, doesn't seem massive to me. I think it was something like 15 or 16 points to finish in the top 8 to go straight through. So that'd be 5 wins out of 8, maybe slightly more, which that does feel more difficult. But again, not, am I mad? Not impossible to think we might win 5 games out of 8.
You know what? I'm going to take a pinch of salt with it and go on the air of caution because this is a whole different kettle of fish for it. I look at it and the one game I fear more than most is that Monaco away because I look at that's a really tricky game. Monaco have recruited well this summer with some really good young players from around Europe and they're investing heavily in their systems in terms of that. So I look at that as a really tough game. I look at Leipzig and go, okay, they turned us over in pre-season, but then we beat them at the at the Red Bull Arena last summer. So take of that what you will, sort of thing. So there's certainly worse draws to have, but I just look at it and I'm just concerned about our away form just by how we performed on the road last year. But then we have to remember last year we were hampered by injuries from the get-go, weren't we? So, you know, it's so tricky, but I just enjoy the ride this season.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I just hope that we're in a position where we are ready to go on the front of actually qualifying for next season, because that's where you build and that's where it's real go time for the time being. Just take it as it comes, sort of thing. I'm not going to take too much from it and be too disheartened, but I don't think we're a million miles away from being able to turn a team like Bayern Munich or Juventus over at home.
Oh yeah, so exciting. The thought of that. What a sentence that is to end on. We might be able to turn over someone at Bayern Munich at home. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Right, Matt, that'll do us for this one. Thank you very much for joining us on the post-match reaction. Thanks everyone for tuning in live with us while Man City are beating West Ham. So you
haven't done your man of the match, Dan.
Oh, of course. I forgot. Oh, here we go then. So next up is...
Sponsored by NordVPN, it's the Man of the Match award, and I will accept 2 choices if you cannot narrow it down to 1.
Can you narrow it down to 1 for me, Matt?
I thought about this because you build this big moment up, didn't you?
And I forgot it.
And for me, Jacob Ramsey to come on so early on and make the impact, it is no mean feat. I thought we carried the ball very well, made a really good impact as well. And I think the only reason why I substituted was purely down to the fact that we needed that defensive shoring up towards the end. And if you want to give the second name in that picture, then I thought Tielemans was really solid, especially going back to his old club as well. I thought he was very good, very productive on the ball, and turned over a lot of the ball pretty well as well. So between those two.
Yeah, okay, nice. Thank you for reminding me about that segment. Totally forgot. This podcast is, of course, sponsored by NordVPN. So if you want to get involved with that, all the information is in the description down below. As I was saying, thanks everyone for tuning in with our podcast to watch or listen to. We very much appreciate it. International break now. Boo. We will take our foot off the gas ever so slightly. We tend to do 4 or 5 episodes a week in the season. We won't be doing that in the international break. We'll have our Q&A on Monday. We're going to do a transfer window video as well next week, and we're filming the first episode of the Villa Social as well. So that'll be out next weekend, probably this time next week. So a little bit quieter from us in terms of content, but there'll be still something to keep you going through the boring international break. Matt, thanks for joining me. Thanks everyone for watching or listening, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.